Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. I sat down with Todd and we talked about the role of convention coordinator. Todd organizes a lot of the conventions that Chaosium has a presence at, and he shares some of his expertise and some of his insights on how conventions have changed over recent years. I'm going to jump across to that interview in just a moment, but first, remember to subscribe to the Chaosium YouTube channel. It helps us out and it lets us make more content like this. Thanks.
Well, the convention coordinator ranges for Chaosium to attend medium-sized, large-sized conventions across our district. I'm North America, so I get the big ones like Gen Con and Origins, PAX Unplugged is coming up in December, and I'll be running a booth, stocking it with all the products for people to come and buy, recruiting game masters to run game sessions at these events. At Gen Con, it might be a team of 40 people, which I have to basically cat herd the entire time to shuffle in some 200 people in and out of all the sessions. That's not 200, that's right, 130 people out and in every time block so that we can get people playing Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest.
As one of the cats that is often herded, I know that it can be a logistical nightmare. How did you come into this job working with Chaosium?
Well, I did a lot of maps for them in older products back when they were Moon Design. So a graphic design involvement in doing, for example, 8 pages out of the Guide to Chlorantha or various maps for reprints of the Stafford Classics. But I helped out at conventions in the Seattle area just after Neil and Rick and Mob and Jeff took over for Chaosium. And they said, you know, we need you. You have the personality, the personability, you have the ability to sell our products because you know both ranges, Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest stuff. And you have a good pattern at the booth, so you can draw people in and ask them what games they like to play and then tell them about products that might fit that particular need. So from there, it grew to doing a few conventions to running the Cult of Chaos and getting our game masters aware of conventions across the entire world through our monthly newsletter.
So where do you fit as a games player inside the Chaosium suite? Are you said you know RuneQuest and Call of Cthulhu. Do you have a preference? Are you also a Pendragon fan? Do you like 7th Sea?
So I've played them all, and I'm in a weekly RuneQuest game where my Orlanthe warrior or Orlanthe noble is trying to become king for the Locane tribe. But been a game master more over my career as a gamer than I have a player. So I've been running RuneQuest, I ran Pendragon, I ran lots of Call of Cthulhu. I have had a chance to do a lot of basic role-playing experiments back in my days in college, where it's like, we're gonna play a game that's set in some sci-fi setting, because it's just been a great tool for being able to make up your own games. And outside of that, played all the major and all the minor RPG games, whether it's D&D to Traveler to the Hero system. So pretty well-rounded across the entire spectrum.
Do you think that there is a big difference between the way that people play at conventions and the way that they play at home games? I mean, obviously they're not identical, but what would you say are those major differences?
Well, a major difference is that aside from maybe 2-3 friends that you manage to corral with you into coming to the event, you're going to be playing with a bunch of strangers. You're going to be playing with a new game master for the first time, most likely. You're going to be playing with all kinds of really interesting people trying to do their own spins on either pre-gens or bringing their own living character into the game. That creates a different environment. And the fact that the games are structured to fit into a strong 3 to 4 hour time block means that the structure of the game is a lot different because it's going to be done after 4 hours, unlike your home game, which can just be a long continuing saga where let's pick up again next week, everyone. So that's a different structure. For Call of Cthulhu, one-shots are amazing because you're given a bunch of pre-gens. And the fact that in the final act against the big confrontation with a monster or a supernatural force, potentially half or all but one person could die, and that actually is probably the best outcome. And they're one-shot characters. They're intended to be the victims of a horror movie, as it were. That's something the convention play really well suits.
As a games player who sort of got into the industry a little bit later, I missed out on a lot of the classic convention history. And I always hear about these amazing conventions that existed or that, you know, that have these legacies that have lasted for a very long time. Have you noticed a change in conventions over the last, you know, years that you've been involved with them?
That's a great question. The smaller intimate cons, the Chaosium con that we're making is modeled after, like Kraken, Tentacles, Eternal Con, the old RQ con that was happening in North America. I never got a chance to go to any of those. Those are a totally different kind of convention than what Origins, Gen Con, PAX Unplugged, or other smaller events like Oricon, OrcaCon, KublaCon. These are a different structure of event, partly because of the North American and partly also because of the way that the gamer base has been built up for these fan-based events. Gen Con has to be different than Eternal Con. Gen Con has 70,000 people that show up running board game tournaments, card game tournaments, miniatures, while RPG-focused events are different. But I think that the changes that you're talking about have been pretty small and incremental. It's the tide washing on the shore where a living campaign ends, like Living Greyhawk ended, and they started with the new 4th edition D&D and tried to make a new thing, and that had its successes and failures. And those tempos kind of mix up like who is running the events, letting new blood offer their own spin on how conventions should be run and what type of new events we might offer. These are the kind of things that made Living Dungeon, which is like a fun LARP that's at major conventions, that's a paid experience. And it is an experience. You're going to be going into somebody made a dungeon where you're going to be facing off against human NPCs and running a character. That didn't exist more than 20 years ago, and that's been a pretty major change. So new opportunities, crazy things will be probably happening in the future where we do VR. Certainly the fact that online conventions are now running side by side with the physical ones because of COVID, I don't think that's going to entirely go away. So the changes can be part of the tempo of the current zeitgeist.